I think it's March the 4th, you guys. What's up, 60 Gang? Tuesday, March the 4th. Good morning to those who woke up with me. Happy birthday to those born March the 4th. And my condolences to those who did not wake up today. This is your boy Doug, originator of 60 Gang. Life and style of a 60-year-old. And welcome to 60 Gang for those who woke up today at 60. You have to be 60 years old to be in 60 Gang. Make it to 60. It's a big thing. It's a big thing making it out of your 50s, to actually be honest with you. Making it out of any age is a challenge, to be absolutely honest with you. So to make it to 60 Gang, that's why we're here. That's why I keep calling it 60 Gang, because it's considered a blessing to get this far in life. Let's see. I'm gonna make sure I got everything. I don't think I got everything. I'll be right back, guys. I got everything. And drop the garage door. Well, to Canton, Georgia again. Went out to, yesterday I went out there to diagnose a microwave. And I picked up the part yesterday on my way home. So now I'm on my way back out there to install a control board. I try to get next day turnaround if I don't have the part at hand. So I had the part picked up. I picked it up on my way home. And now we're going back out there to set it up, install it, make that bread, come back home. So it's off to Canton, Georgia, my guys, and you going with me. So,
before you start seeing some action. 6 months? 12? A year and 18 months? How long do you before you think there's going to be enough where if there's something, it should be brought? That's just an easy question for you. That's just something you have to answer. All right, so we're right about 9 o'clock. Let's get ready to hear J.D. Vance. And the other thing I want to say before I switch over here is I love you either way. I'm just saying love each other and chill. Don't get mad at everybody. There's a lot going on. Let's listen to Hannity is about to introduce him, and I'll see you at the commercial break. All right? All right.
Until the country makes a commitment to good faith peace negotiations. This after the Ukrainian President Zelensky proclaimed that peace is, quote, still very, very far away. Now, keep in mind that Zelensky has already been given many, many opportunities to team up with the U.S. on a peace deal. And according to my numerous sources, Zelensky is now asking to come back to the White House, and he would now finally sign off on what he should have signed off on last week, and that is the rare earth minerals agreement that would bind our two countries together. But it's not going to happen when the president of Ukraine seems to want war in perpetuity, a war without the U.S. and without European money he could never even fight. Anyway, on Truth Social, President Trump called Zelensky's recent comments, quote, the worst statement that could have been made, and America will not put up with this much longer. This guy doesn't want there to be peace as long as he has America's backing. Don't forget the rare earth mineral deal. That would be just phase one of President Trump's peace plan. The deal would put U.S. business interests on the ground in Ukraine, which itself would provide a significant deterrent to Vladimir Putin. It would also help Ukraine pay back the debt to the United States while also ensuring that U.S. funding continues and provide massive amounts of money that country will desperately need to rebuild their country. This keeps going, there's not going to be a country to rebuild. Phase two would be a ceasefire agreement, and phase three would be the negotiated settlement. This would be the hard part, and peace, hopefully, in Europe as a result. Zelensky can't even bring himself to sign off on phase one. Last week's tense meeting at the White House, in spite of what the fake news legacy media mob is telling you, was not an ambush. It was supposed to be a show of unity. It was supposed to be celebrating what was a done deal. It was supposed to be mostly ceremonial in nature. In fact, it was the third time Zelensky was supposed to sign off on that very same deal before trying to relitigate the agreement in the Oval Office at the last minute. But of course, the hysteria and anti-American sentiment in Europe is now spiking. Good luck on their own. One major gas company, Norway, vowed to boycott our U.S. Navy, refusing to refill our ship. Really? Norway, they stepped in. They're now promising that will not be the case. On X, only moments after Zelensky's contentious meeting at the White House, multiple European leaders posted their unwavering support for Zelensky's seemingly endless war. But then they hosted Zelensky for a meeting where they showered him with praise. Now, as Lindsey Graham said, if Europe wants to take this on all by themselves and protect their own continent, they're free to do so. But as Donald Trump pointed out on Truth Social, Europe, in the meeting they had with Zelensky, stated flatly, they cannot do the job without the U.S. Probably not a great statement to have been made in terms of a show of strength against Russia. What are they thinking? He's right. President Trump raises a great question. What is Europe thinking? The United States spends nearly $1 trillion annually on defense. All of the countries in the European Union spend just about $326 billion combined. When it comes to funding Ukraine, the same disparity continues. The U.S. has been carrying far more of the financial burden than Ukraine's actual neighbors on their continent. And to top it off, Europe is actually sending more money to Russia, buying oil and gas than aid to Ukraine. In fact, the EU bought a whopping $22 billion in fossil fuels from Russia in 2024 alone. Europe is making Putin filthy rich so he can continue to feed his war machine. America, we should be supplying Europe with all of their energy needs, and hopefully under Donald Trump's plan, that will soon be the case as we move towards energy dominance. But if you want to know how Putin is funding his war, look no further than the European Union. Now remember, Trump gave Angela Merkel that white flag of surrender after Germany did that multi-billion-dollar energy deal with Putin. So if Europe wants this war to continue with no end in sight, well, they're going to end up being on their own, and it's not going to end very well. And I'd like to see the killing stop. I'd like to see the destruction stop. And I'd like to see at least the rebuild of a country before it's too late. But as President Trump stands ready and willing to make a deal, earlier tonight, I asked Vice President J.D. Vance about this and so much more. Here's part one of our interview just a couple hours ago. Mr. Vice President, thank you for being with us.
Good to see you, man. Great to be here.
Let's go back to the Oval Office Friday.
Yeah.
From your perspective.
Yeah, great TV. As the president said. Yeah, well, you know, it's funny. So we have a 45-minute press conference, and the president normally does this, and I've seen this now 3 or 4 times with foreign leaders, where he likes to bring the media in, likes to have a conversation, but answer questions with the press. As you know, he's very open with reporters. And what I noticed is that for the first 25, 30 or so minutes, he tried to sort of bend over backwards to be gracious and kind to Zelensky, even when Zelensky was kind of needling him, even when Zelensky was saying things that I thought were untrue. The president just tried to be diplomatic, right? I think that's his natural instinct in that situation. And then when it really went off the rails, of course, is when I asked, or you had a Polish journalist who asked a question, the president answered it, and then I answered it, and then something about my answer just really set Zelensky off. So then he came at me.
So you're blaming
yourself. And then I went back at him, and what I tried to do originally was actually try to diffuse the situation a little bit, because I'm like, we're having this meeting. Obviously, there are 100 television cameras here. Let's try to have this conversation in private. And then the president, as we kept on going back and forth, I tried again to say, well, maybe we should have this conversation in private. And the president was like, nope, actually, I don't want to have it in private anymore. I want to have this actual conversation in public for the American people to see. And I do think that there was just a certain sense of, there was a lack of respect. There was a certain sense of entitlement. And most importantly, look, we can look past all that stuff, but the president has set a very clear goal for his administration. He wants the killing to stop. And I think that it's very important that President Zelensky, and of course President Putin too, they've both got to come to the negotiating table, and that's ultimately where things broke apart. I really don't care what President Zelensky says about me or anybody else, but he showed a clear unwillingness to engage in the peace process that President Trump has said is the policy of the American people and of their president. That's the real breakdown, is I think Zelensky wasn't yet there, and I think frankly now still isn't there, but I think he'll get there eventually. He has to.
My understanding is he tried to get back in, or tried to stay a number of times, and then made numerous calls to come back. Is that true?
I don't know about numerous calls, but they certainly made at least one request to come back in and continue the conversation. The president was like, look, first of all, they were disrespectful, and second of all, what are we even going to talk about? They've shown a clear unwillingness to discuss the peaceful settlement that President Trump is trying to bring to the situation. I think a lot of Americans are sort of, it's useful to step back and ask ourselves, what is the actual plan here? You can't just fund the war forever. The American people won't stand for it. And by the way, Sean, if you look at European opinion polls, the Europeans aren't going to stand forever for it either. We need to bring this thing to a peaceful settlement. The president was trying to do that. He'll continue to try to do that, but you've got to have two to tango. You've got to have a negotiating partner in the Ukrainians who recognize that, of course they have their views, and of course they're not always going to agree with us, but they've got to participate in the conversation. They weren't willing to do that on Friday, so the president said send them home.
He said today that the war he expects will go on a very long time. I don't know where he's going to get the money to fund that war. I have my doubts that Europe will fund the war to the level that Biden and Harris were funding it. And then the issue now has come up whether or not this administration will continue to offer money and arms for this war to continue. Because without America, I would argue the president was right in saying they have no cards.
Yeah, well, Sean, I think our European friends, frankly, are being really, they're doing a disservice to the Ukrainians, because their own populations are saying, we're not going to fund this war indefinitely. The American people are saying, we don't want to fund the war indefinitely. So the only thing that is in the best interest of America, of Russia, of Ukraine, and of Europe is to bring this thing to a close. What happened, Sean, is you have Zelensky. He goes to Europe, and a lot of our European friends puff him up. They say, you're a freedom fighter. You need to keep fighting forever. Well, fighting forever with what? With whose money, with whose ammunition, and with whose lives? The president is actually taking a much more realistic perspective and saying, this can't go on forever. We can't fund this thing forever. The Ukrainians can't fight forever. So let's bring this thing to a peaceful settlement.
When I interviewed Zelensky, he wouldn't give me direct answers. I asked him about the mineral deal to pay the U.S. back. To me, there's three phases in this. And my understanding was Friday was supposed to be relatively ceremonial.
It was.
And in that it was supposed to be, we signed the mineral deal. That's part one. Part two would be a ceasefire. Part three would be the hardest part, the negotiated settlement with Putin, who, correct me if I'm wrong, said he's willing to talk peace with Trump.
Yeah, he said he's willing to talk peace, and of course we trust but verify. We want to have the conversation. We don't assume that everything that anybody tells us is true. That's why we want to engage in this conversation. But you're exactly right, Sean. When the Ukrainians came to Washington on Friday, it was supposed to be ceremonial. There had been some public back and forth, some disagreements, some words spoken in public, and the president was like, let's have this moment. We give some credit to the brave Ukrainian fighters, and of course it's a very brave army that they have there in Ukraine. Let's sign this minerals deal, which importantly does two things. It allows the American people to get some of their money back, but it also shows the Ukrainian people that America has a long-term investment in their sovereignty. You do those things, we'll sign this thing, we'll have a rah-rah moment, and then we'll get to the tough talk of negotiating peace. We couldn't even get the Ukrainians to a point where they could talk about the peaceful settlement. And look, in some ways, Sean, I get it. I get the frustration. I get the rage. It's their country, of course. It's not our country. But you've got to accept, cooler heads have got to prevail. This thing cannot go on forever. This is the important point. I'd say this too, are of course, most importantly, the Americans who are watching, but people all over the world. When you talk to leaders in private, whether they're Ukrainian or European, when you talk to people in private, they will tell you this cannot go on forever. There aren't enough Ukrainian lives, there isn't enough American money, and there isn't enough ammunition to fund this thing indefinitely. The only realistic pathway to bringing this thing to a settlement is President Trump's pathway. We encourage both President Zelensky and President Putin to follow that path.
Well, I mean, hundreds of billions of dollars have been spent, and this came up in the discussion Friday. The Biden administration called Putin every name in the book, and they've been trying to get the president.
And he still invaded anyway.
Okay, he still invaded anyway. Well, remember, it depends if it's a minor incursion. Let's go back to that moment, which I thought as troops were amassing on the border. Yep. But I go back and I think about this, and Biden spent all of this money, called Putin all these names. The media and the Democrats, they want Donald Trump to call him names. And the president addressed that.
Thing.
And then he's supposed to call him and say, Vladimir, you ready to talk a peace now?
Yeah.
That's not going to work.
No, it's diplomacy 101, right? Is you have to have a reasonable relationship with somebody to be able to even start the conversation. We have to remember, Sean, Ukraine, half of the country, a third of the country is totally destroyed. The economy is depressed. You've got hundreds of thousands of dead Ukrainians. Of course, a lot of dead Russians as well. The president wants to negotiate a settlement. How can you negotiate if you can't even talk to somebody? And that's what he said. He's not saying, like, nobody's suggesting, as Secretary Rubio said, no one is suggesting that we give the Nobel Peace Prize to Vladimir Putin. What we're saying is it's important for President Trump to be able to have a conversation. That's not well served by standing up at a press conference and calling the guy every negative name in the book. By the way, as we just said, President Biden called Putin every single name in the book. What did it lead to? It led to war, it led to destruction, it led to conflict. President Trump is trying to bring this thing to a close. You got to be able to talk to somebody to do that.
Is the door open? President Trump said Friday he can come back if he wants peace.
That's not me. That's Fox's buffering. Hold on. Let me see if it catches up again. And
very supportive of Ukraine in this conflict. I mean, he was livid.
Yes.
And he said if they want to now defend their own continent, let them go ahead and do it. Good luck to them.
Yeah, and my message to Ukrainians, by the way, to President Zelensky is, when you've lost Lindsey Graham, that means you need to come to the negotiating table and recognize Donald Trump is the only game in town. He's the only person who I think has a meaningful plan to save that country. But, Sean, here's the problem with the Europeans. And a lot of these guys are our friends. They're our allies. We, of course, the president has a great relationship with a lot of European heads of state, and so do I, but they need to be realistic. Mm-hmm. And the craziest part about this, Sean, is that sometimes you'll have European heads of state who in public will puff up their chest and say, we're in it with President Zelensky for the next 10 years. And then in private, they'll pick up the phone and say, this can't go on forever. He has to come to the negotiating table. So I honestly don't care what the Europeans say in public. What I care is what they say in private, and what they need to be saying to President Zelensky is this can't go on forever. The bloodshed, the killing, the economic devastation, it's making everyone worse off. The only pathway to, I think, back to peace and prosperity is what the president is trying to accomplish.
And now we look back in time and we see Joe Biden was beginning to understand that the patience of the American people is running thin.
That's right.
Hundreds of billions of dollars. We're a nation with nearly $40 trillion in debt. I mean, it's too much.
Well, Sean, this is an important point, though, because I was a United States Senator, of course, for the last 2 years of the Biden administration. I got elected in 2022.
I think you like this job better?
I think I like this job a lot better. I certainly like the president a lot better. And here's the thing, when you would talk to the Biden administration officials in private, it's another example of a terrible situation the Biden admin left the Trump administration. When you ask them what's the plan, okay, we're going to spend tens of billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars in Ukraine. What is your plan? And they would honestly tell you, well, we're just going to send them weapons for as long as we can and hope eventually they can turn the tide. Hope is not a strategy. Throwing money and ammunition at a terrible conflict, that is not a strategy. The only guy in town with a strategy is the President of the United States, and everybody needs to follow his lead.
What scares me is Zelensky, when he says it's going to go on for years, how many more lives are going to be lost? He's not going to have a country to save at the end of that. The minerals deal would have provided the monies to rebuild their country and a strong U.S. presence and maybe European troops as well.
And this is an important part of it. The president knows that, look, if you want real security guarantees, if you want to actually ensure that Vladimir Putin does not invade Ukraine again, the very best security guarantee is to give Americans economic upside in the future of Ukraine. That is a way better security guarantee than 20,000 troops from some random country that hasn't fought a war in 30 or 40 years. The security guarantee and also the economic guarantee for Ukraine is to rebuild the country and ensure that America has a long-term interest. You're not going to do that if you come to the Oval Office, insult the president, and refuse to follow his plan for peace.
If he called, and I hate hypothetical questions,
sure,
forgive me. If he called tomorrow and said, I am ready to adopt your plan for peace, he can come back?
I think that if he called and had a serious proposal for how he was going to engage in the process. Look, there are details that really matter that we're already working on with the Russians. We've already talked to some of our allies. He needs to engage seriously on the details. I think once that happens, then absolutely we want to talk. Are
you convinced Putin and the Russians are willing to meet them? I don't want to say the word halfway. They're willing to do their part to achieve a negotiated settlement.
Am I convinced? No. But do I think that there's a real pathway? You got to trust but verify. You got to engage in the negotiation. You've got to see what steps people are willing to take. This is another thing, Sean. Obviously, I'm biased because I really love the guy. But when the media attacks President Trump as somehow on the side of Putin, two big problems with that. First of all, the only president in 20 years where you haven't had the Russians take a bunch of territory was under the first term of Donald J. Trump. The second part of that is you've got to actually accept that President Trump, he's not just assuming that everything the Russians tell him is true, he's negotiating with them. There's a give and take. There's a trust but verify. That's called diplomacy. We used to have some respect for that in Washington, D.C.
And coming up, more of my exclusive interview with the Vice President.
On commercial, perfect timing. It's actually just coming out right now. And this is, there's a lot to go along with this. We thought about this last week when they said they had reached a deal. And like, did they really reach a deal? That's what a lot of people were asking. We go here, they were all high-fiving each other. We got a deal, we got a deal, we got a deal. Now we ain't got a deal, we ain't got a deal. So here's what is being talked about right now. Negotiations to avert a shutdown sputter as disputes over DOGE cuts persist. Trump and congressional leaders have lost hope in a full government funding deal and have pivoted towards a stopgap bill for the rest of the fiscal year, but even that is proving difficult. Congress is careening toward a government shutdown in just 11 days as the discord between the two parties over funding talks grow with no clear path to reach a deal. The government is set to run out of money at the end of next Friday, March 14th. Republicans, and this is very important here, Republicans control the House. However, they need Democrat support to pass a bill which is subject to 60 votes. So that's where the problem is at this point. If this goes to a shutdown, in order for the government to, per se, reopen, they will need 60 votes to bring it back, which means they will have to, for lack of a better word, acquiesce to the Democrats. And I can tell you why they pulled this junk tonight at 7 p.m. I can tell you why. Because I bet you, if you dug into this, you're going to find out that the timestamp is probably right after President Trump said he's not giving Ukraine any money. And that pissed off all the Democrats. What do you mean you're not funding Ukraine? What do you mean I can't get my kickbacks? So they're saying now, and they're taking a hard line saying, well, we just have to shut it down. And of course, they'll each point their fingers at the other person to say it's going to shut down. I'm pretty sure Trump doesn't care, shut it down, except for the fact that you're going to need 60 votes to reopen. So now you got an ultimate game of chicken at this point, because I don't think the Republicans want to get to a position where, you need to have 60 votes to get something done. And I don't think the Democrats want to play chicken with Trump and see where that goes. We are in such a bad place. I mean, somebody had earlier said, Barry, you're just being so negative. Negative? Negative left. We passed negative like 6 exits down on the highway. We're way past negative. We're at real town at this point. Real town is we're about to see this government shut down. These people are playing all kinds of games. You think they're pissed off now? You think they're pissed off now because he decided he's not going to fund Ukraine? Wait till you see him tomorrow night after this State of the Union thing, State of the Union address to Congress, whatever you want to call it. Wait till you see tomorrow night how pissed they get. I'm told that this thing is supposed to be epic. Caroline Leavitt said, her exact words were, it's going to be must-see TV. So Trump's on a bit of a roll. He's feeling his oats. He thinks he's got some muscle behind him. He told Zelensky, get bent. Now he's putting together his own coalition with Javier Milei, Giorgia Meloni, the guy from El Salvador, Viktor Orban from Hungary, and you're starting to see people align according to where they want to go. Then you got the big mouth guy from Canada, not Trudeau, the guy's name is Ford, who's threatening to turn off electricity in the United States. Remember the 10 days of darkness. Just remember, just telling you, go look that up, 10 days of darkness. But he's openly saying right now, if you give us a tariff, we're going to put 10 days. No, he didn't say 10 days of darkness. He just said we're going to turn off your electricity. So I don't know what parts of the country get fed by Canadian electricity, but he's threatening to shut down electricity. These people are going to go for broke. They have nothing to lose. The entirety of their globalist agenda is going down in flames. Back to J.D. Vance.
Is the media and Democrats that ignorant? Have you not figured out that means, let's negotiate?
Exactly.
And they seem not to want to understand that part of them. You said at the Munich Security Conference, and I want to quote it directly, biggest threat to Europe is not Russia or China. You talked about the retreat of Europe from fundamental values. The threat is from within.
Yes.
And you went on to talk about digital censorship and canceling elections. That was a powerful condemnation of what is really happening there.
I appreciate it. And it's also, by the way, Sean, a condemnation of what the Biden administration was doing. This is one of the things that I think the Europeans didn't appreciate about the speech is the biggest driver of mass censorship in the last 5 years. It actually wasn't the Europeans. They were the victims of it in a lot of ways. It was coming from the Biden administration. This whole crazy left-wing idea that we're not allowed to debate ideas, that we're not allowed to discuss things, that we have to silence people, censor them, throw them in jail for silently praying outside of an abortion clinic. These ideas are going to destroy Western civilization. They're going to destroy Europe, and they would destroy the United States of America if we allowed them to fester. Thank God we have a president now who believes in free speech, but the danger is still there. The danger is there in Europe. The danger is there in the United States of America. We have to ask ourselves the questions as leaders. Are we willing to defend people even if we disagree with what they say? If you're not willing to do that, I don't think you're fit to lead Europe or the United States of America.
If you're running in fear of your own voters, there is nothing America can do for you.
Exactly right.
You said it at the same conference.
That's exactly right. There's nothing that we can do for you if you're terrified of your own people. And Sean, you see this every single day. What are some of the biggest drivers of violence in these European societies, it's mass migration. It's people who haven't assimilated into European societies, who are driving cars into Christmas festivals, killing tons of innocent people. And very often, the European response to that is not to say, oh, well, maybe we should get control of our own borders. The response is to try to silence and shut down their own citizenry. That is a danger in Europe. It was a danger under Joe Biden in the United States of America. And look, of course, China is a major threat. It's a major competitor over the next few years, over the next few decades. But I have no doubt that America and Europe could take on whatever threats so long as we're strong internally. That's the biggest risk to our civilization. It's that weakness internally. That's what we have to fix.
The Democratic Party now, they want long, protracted wars. The Democratic Party championing men to play in women's sports. The Democratic Party putting the rights of the illegals over the safety of Americans, and defending what will be hundreds of trillions of dollars in waste, fraud, abuse, corruption. How does that end for them?
I think it ends very, very poorly. And the American people are a lot smarter than the Democrats give them credit for. You cannot shut up your fellow citizens, force biological men to play in sports with girls, which, by the way, it's just insulting to the girls. It's actually dangerous to the girls. Title IX, it's some of these sports are very violent. You don't want to have biological men against women. It's crazy. And the Democrats, again, there's this crazy idea in the Democratic Party that if you just repeat insane ideas, eventually the American people are going to believe them. We actually think the American people are smart, and we should listen to them rather than preach at them. And I think that's the core right now of the president's political strength.
Last question. Tomorrow, you'll be sitting in a very prominent seat. Are you excited about your seating chart for the State of the Union?
I'm excited about the speech. It's going to be a little unusual to have the camera on me for, an hour and a half and every reaction that I have. But I think, as the thing that I've learned, Sean, is people always say when you're on camera, try to be stoic and try not to show your cards. I'm going to have fun tomorrow because the President of the United States, he's going to make a lot of good arguments. He's going to talk about a lot of the successes that we've had in these first 45 days. He's also going to be himself, which means he's going to poke a little fun, and we're going to have a good time tomorrow, so I'm just going to try to enjoy it.
Well, it seems like when I first interviewed you, it seems like it's sunk in. You now know you're the Vice President. So you're like, okay, this is a little new, but Mr. Vice President, you're always generous with your time. We really appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank
man.
you so much.
Yeah,
appreciate
good to see you,
it.
Sean.
Luckily, I knew Sean was going to play games and not have a full interview, even though he says he's going to have an interview. So I got a whole bunch of stuff to go over with you, mostly stuff about Ukraine. It's getting a lot of questions about this potential government shutdown and what about, getting power shut off. So I don't know who's connected to the Canadian grid. I know I'm not down here in Florida, so I don't know who is, but this is what this guy said, and there's a whole video. If you want, I can download and say it, but Ontario Premier Doug Ford promises to cut off energy to the United States as retaliation against the tariffs. If they want to try and annihilate Ontario, I will do everything, including cutting off their energy with a smile on my face. I don't know if he's got it like that. I can't tell you. I don't know what grid gets fed from Canada. I can't imagine that we are reliant on Canada to provide electricity for any part of America, but that's what he said. He actually came out and said that. Kind of scary if he does. I guess you'll find out if tomorrow they do he's going to do the tariffs, what some people are how they're going to react. Because that retaliatory, we just go in there and take the power from him. I don't know. But he's hold on, let me see what he says, if he says where. I think, let me go ahead and download this and let you guys hear. I can't, okay, because it's a different size. But he said he'll do it with a smile on his face. So we're getting to the crux of a lot of different things, very, very quickly. The government shutdown. So let's take a couple of seconds about that. Everything except non-essential. Everything except essential services. Non-essential stuff will go away. You won't be able to go to Yosemite. You won't be able to go to parks and park rangers. They won't be there. You won't be able to go to the Washington Monument. So if you got vacation, you won't be. They'll go ahead and shut that down. All those things that aren't essential will get shut down. You're still going to get your pay if you're on Social Security. You're still going to get your pay and be able to, if you're on Medicaid or VA. None of that stuff is affected. Government, soldiers, everybody, they may not get paid, but they get their back pay in a lump sum. It comes back to them as soon as it opens. But more importantly, the Democrats will use this as a cudgel. They want to get rid of Doge. This is their way to get rid of Doge. They are going to use Doge. They're going to use Ukraine, and they're going to try and force that stuff and make Trump acquiesce in order for them to even think about signing. So what you're going to see over the next, 14, so you got 11 days. 11 days of chaos is what you're going to see. If this thing continues the way they're talking about and what they want to do, you're going to see 11 days of chaos, and we're not going to know probably until the last moment what they're actually going to try and keep or shut down, if it gets that far. I know, and you know at the same time, that these people don't take kindly to the money being pulled away from Ukraine. So that's going to be a big, big problem as well. They don't like the whole idea with the tariffs. That's going to be a big problem. So understand, you're about to see a fight of epic proportions, because they don't want any of the stuff that Trump's doing, and they don't have any leadership, and all they're going to try and do is cause havoc. So get ready for it. To hell with the Dems. Yeah, it's going to get. I'm not worried. My husband's electrician. Okay. Canadian electricity. I don't know who gets fed it. Okay, somebody. Thank you for doing this. Emma Gem says, Grok says, New York, Michigan, and Minnesota are the closest to Ontario. So maybe something up there happens. Alan, you're absolutely right. The government never shuts down. They always seem to have, well, it's done a couple times, but they always seem to have these last minute deals. The problem with the last minute deal is, in order to have the last minute deal, they are going to force some concessions. I tell you right now, they are going to force some concessions, and it may be Doge. This might be the hill they're willing to die on. Dear Democrats, no one cares what you like or don't like anymore. Yep. And this is where they're headed. So we need 60 senators to get anything done. I had actually, who was? I believe it was Buddy Carter, or the interview before that. He said, we need to have this deal done, because if it shuts down, you need 60 to reopen. That's why you want to avert the shutdown with the continuing. They thought they had a deal. But if it goes off the cliff, it stays off the cliff unless 60 senators agree. So that's the only reason to prevent it from going off the cliff, is because it's not coming back without 60 votes. Yikes. Absolutely yikes. Excuse me. Doge says, Doge stays, period. Yeah, that's what they're going to want. They're going to want to take that, and they're going to want to get the money back to Ukraine. Let them do it. I'm not worried. MAGA is tough. Yeah, if we lose Doge, what can Trump do? I'm in the Pacific Northwest, but we get our power from the Bonneville Dam in Portland. Who owns that? Is that by the state, or is that by the government? I'm not sure here. Let me look and see what's Hannity doing. All right, so he that was it for the JD Vance. All right, so let me get on with what I had prepared for you, and then we could talk about. But I centered everything tonight around Ukraine, because this is a big story. He didn't touch on it enough. He talked about the fight, but let's dig into what's going on with Ukraine. And so the first part of this is what you just heard. President Trump said he is shutting it down.
Reporting the United States is pausing all U.S. military aid to Ukraine until President Trump determines the Ukrainians show a commitment of good faith peace negotiations. That's according to a senior Trump administration telling Fox. This is not a permanent termination of aid. It is a pause. The orders are going out right now. The official said this in response to Ukrainian President Zelensky's conduct over the last week and his words over the weekend. So it's all stopping, Brian.
Yeah, well, he needs an apology. President Trump says, I need a direct apology. This could be fixed with a phone call. Sorry if things went off the rails. Liked the first 45 minutes of our talk. Didn't like the last 10. So let's get this thing back on track. I understand what you mean, and let's do it. And then you put the ball in Russia's court, and let's see how sincere they are. But it's going to take a call from Zelensky to Trump directly, and I'm sure he'd take the call. The guy does not hold grudges.
Leslie, this is going to be a part of that speech. Democrats, some of them saying they're going to boycott the speech. How do you think this all plays?
I'm not a big... Before she begins, that's another thing I'll be covering tomorrow. Just to let you know, I'm broadcasting basically all day. So the plan is a whole bunch of interviews throughout the day. In between, I've got Trump's former State of the Union speeches all queued up and ready during downtime, in between the interviews and dropping news. But I'm going to go live at 9:30 in the morning. First interview at 10 o'clock with General Michael Flynn. So we're kicking off the day hard. General Michael Flynn will be here at 10 a.m. Hopefully nothing comes up where he can't make it, but if he's here, we'll be ready to go. So this being what he just mentioned, a bunch of the Democrats now are playing like little brats, and they're like, we're not even going to go to the state. I keep calling it the State of the Union. It really is a State of the Union, but they don't call it a State of the Union when it's the first one, a month after or so after you got inaugurated. So they just call it a joint address. But in any event, it is a joint address, and a bunch of the Democrats just said, we're not going. We don't care.
Fan of boycotts. I'm also not a big fan of pre-rebuttal. Let's see what the guy has to say. Show up. That's what people vote for you to do. And by the way, when's Putin going to apologize to Zelensky for invading his sovereign nation? Just wondering.
True. Absolutely. You're right. There you go. Panel, thanks so much.
Is the Ukraine minerals deal now dead, or can it be revived? Well, I'll let you know. We're making a speech. You probably heard about it tomorrow night, so I'll let you know tomorrow night. But no, I don't think so. I think it's a great deal for us because, Biden very, very foolishly, stupidly, frankly, gave $300 billion and $350 billion more accurately to a country
I gotta take this. Hold on. Got some breaking news for you. Hold on.
Let's look through them as fast as we can, get it out to the American people, because the American people have a right to know, not only on that, but on Kennedy, on Martin Luther King, on all of these cases that the Biden administration has just sat on for all these years. So yeah, it's really, it's not sad, it's infuriating that these people thought that they could sit on this information, but they can't. It's a new day, and we believe in transparency, and it's going to come out. And when we redact things, Sean, what we're going to do is not just pull pages out like they used to do. If something's redacted, you will know the line, and you will know why it's redacted. A victim's name, identifying information of a victim.
Let's talk a little bit about the DOJ prior to your arrival. I believe it was weaponized. How do we prevent that from ever happening again? I believe that once the FBI was the world's premier law enforcement agency, and that was weaponized and politicized. I believe the same with our intel community. How do we restore these institutions to their former greatness?
Well, first and foremost, we got rid of the Jack Smith team. Gone. Those people are gone. We're still trying to find out. There are a lot of people in the FBI and also in the Department of Justice who despise Donald Trump, despise us, don't want to be there. We will find them because you have to believe in transparency. You have to believe in honesty. You have to do the right thing. And right now, we're going to root them out. We will find them, and they will no longer be employed. But again, we're starting at every level of the Justice Department, Sean, and getting rid of the worst of the worst. But there are a lot more people that shouldn't be there, but there are a lot of good people who are out there now risking their lives every day making these cases. You know, today we made a huge case involving a Guatemalan, an illegal from Guatemala, one of the largest human trafficking rings in the country. 20,000 people being smuggled into this country from Guatemala. That arrest was made in California. Last week, an illegal was arrested in New York for ISIS, funding ISIS. It's constant. We are going to get out there. We're going to arrest the bad people, take them off the streets, and restore the Justice Department to what it was made to do, fight violent crime.
Were you, or are you up to this point, I know it's very early in your tenure,
A few weeks.
are you at all shocked at how things were running before you got there?
Shocked. Yeah.
Shocked.
Never thought. Cash and I, Patel, talk about this all the time. You know, we knew it was bad. We never knew how bad. And especially work on the criminal side and on the people who are in there. Well, you've heard the story, of course. I went up, I was visiting the floors. I walk up to the 7th floor, the national security, and I couldn't get in there because it's a skiff. Well, that's how it was secure.
Yeah.
But my detail managed to get me in there. They still had a picture of Joe Biden on the wall and Kamala Harris. That's how bad it was. So I personally took those off the wall. But that's the tip of the iceberg.
What about when you talk about people in the DOJ that have an awful lot of power, and maybe what they did to Donald Trump is unprecedented. Evaluation of Mar-a-Lago, the double standard with the rate of Mar-a-Lago, the FISA abuse, Russia lie, a dirty misinformation dossier signed 3 times by a former FBI head, in that case, James Comey. Are these all on the table to get to the bottom of over time?
Everything's on the table, Sean. We're going to look at everything. And as I said, the Jack Smith team, gone. That was low-hanging fruit, really. Right. Get rid of them. Get rid of the people that raided the president's home.
Will we look into what they did?
Everything's being looked into. Yeah. Everything. And right now, we are hiring great lawyers, great people around us who we can trust. Right now, the numbers are very small. But now that we have cash in, it's made it a lot easier at the FBI. But he's dealing with what we're dealing. You know, the great men and women of DEA, ATF, the U.S. Marshals. We're all working together to fight violent crime. And it's a shame that a few people have given them such a bad name, as well as the Department of Justice.
It sounds daunting. It sounds like a massive list. It doesn't sound like you're going to be sleeping a lot in the next 4 years.
None of us will, but it's worth it. It's worth it to fight for the American people and to keep America safe.
Amen. Pam, thank you for coming in. Good to see you. Thank you. When we come back.
Okay, so I was talking and I happened to see her on. I'm going to see right now if I can rewind to where she came on. I'm not sure if I can. Hold on, let me just check this. No, I can't. There's no way to rewind on it. So that's going to be it in terms of what she said. Hold on. Yeah, there's no way to. It's live streaming, so I can't. It's not a tape. I can't rewind it. So you heard her. You guys all heard what she was saying and where she wants to take things. So that's where we are. Let's see here. Don't underestimate her capabilities. Okay. We have no idea what they walked into. We just need to trust it's going to happen. We need to be praying for their safety. This is what else we got here. Some of you guys are saying pretty face but empty words. On the other side, tribunals are coming. I'm going to be patient with Bondi and Cash based on her acknowledgement that things are worse than expected. They're not getting any internal support. It's funny. It is both sides. I need action. Blue Now says not convinced. A lot of work. There's a lot of work here. Exactly. MAGA knows the playbook. Barry shouldn't let folk browbeat him. It's his show. I don't feel browbeat. I know people have a strong opinion here. my thing is I don't want anyone to feel like a person's opinion is more strong than someone else's opinion, and I think everyone should be able to voice their opinion and without feeling like they're without feeling like they're going to be attacked. Let's see what else here. Bonnie's mistake is she didn't look at the file. She did arrest a senior FBI agent for obstruction of justice. Arrest or nothing else. Yeah, I understand. I believe in you, Pam. It's a touchy thing. And somebody had asked me earlier about, which I said, I didn't say anything about wavering on support. I didn't say anything about I feel she's not ready. The only thing I was telling you was exactly what was reported. Me personally, my feeling is, and I said it last night and I'll say it again, whatever that guy did and whatever his accomplice did, I don't wonder if that's still as important as the other stuff, meaning find the kids who are in it right now. They're still out there. There's still 300, 400, depending on what number, 400,000 or 500,000 kids still being shuffled around. Find that. The other stuff will keep and get time to go through it. I don't even know what people are looking for with these files. That's another thing. Absent the names, which we don't know. Absent the names, what are the files going to do for anybody? Because if they're going to redact the victims, all you're going to see is, who flew. I mean, like I said, the flight manifesto have been out for years. What exactly are you looking for? That'd be a good question. Put it in the chat. What are you looking for other than names? Is there anything you want to see in the Epstein files other than names? They're not going to show you pictures. They're not going to show you videos. So if you get these files, I would love to know what people are going to be looking for if you don't get the names. What else is it you want? Because maybe that's how she meets expectations. She can say, I'm going to dump all these files, but there's no names. Then how would you feel? Because that would be something she could probably say, hey, there's nothing here. They've already been deleted. So, yeah, Scott Reagan says nothing. It doesn't affect me one bit. Client list, we talking about names, transcripts of what? Depositions. So all that's going to be is like the tawdry stuff. You want to hear what somebody made somebody do? I'm not interested in doing that. I'm not interested in seeing that. I want to know if those that were on the island are going to prison. Yeah, I would love to know that as well. If it comes, we won't get hung up on the subject. We have so much more to fight for. There's kids already out there, crazy. All right, let's continue with more about Ukraine. Caroline Leavitt is due to come up next, and she's going to do an interview. She's probably going to be talking about I'm just going to call it the State of the Union tomorrow night. Do you guys want to hear Caroline Leavitt? You want me to go with the Ukraine stuff? It's up to you. I can go either way, but I think she's on deck to be in the next interview. Or she's going to be talking about investment. Anyway, Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, is on deck to come up and talk to Hannity. Let's see here. He's talking about the theme. Here, let's listen to this because this is interesting.
American dream here now with our Hannity Washington briefing. Our very own White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt. How are you? It's great to see you.
It's great to see you in person, John.
I know.
Thanks for having me.
The only good reason to be to the swamp is to see you, JD, and Pam. That's about it. And the president, when I do get to see him as well. This is major news. I know everyone wants to talk about tariffs, bad. No, why don't people understand the president is a never-ending negotiator?
He's a never-ending negotiator. It's the art of the deal. But also, the president has proven, as he did in his first terms, that tariffs can bring good-paying jobs back here to the United States of America. They protect critical industries here at home. And President Trump is serious when he says he wants to make America the manufacturing superpower of the world. And we have the ability to do it. We have the best resources and the best people. But unfortunately, we've been ruled by a political class that has sold us out for far too long. And we've allowed allowed other nations around the world to rip us off. So your audience should be aware that tonight, 12:01 a.m., tariffs on Mexico and China are going into effect, and another 10% on China, 25% on Mexico, 25% on Canada. And the reason is because we cannot continue to allow fentanyl to pour into our country and kill our people. I bet you every single person watching your show tonight knows somebody who has died at the hands of Chinese fentanyl that has come through our northern or southern border. And one American life is one too many. And these tariffs are necessary to continue to put the pressure on these countries to secure our borders.
Did you see this as a big movement by Mexico to allow us to, by handing over some of these cartel leaders? Is that their way of saying, please don't put the tariffs on us? And the president saying, no, you got to do everything I want.
We have certainly seen an increase of cooperation from Mexico and also from Canada. But over the past 4 years under the previous administration, they allowed thousands of pounds of Chinese produced fentanyl into our country. Last year alone, through the southern border, 4.8 billion people could have died for the amount of fentanyl that came through our borders. At the northern border, there was enough fentanyl to kill 9.8 million people. That's up 2,050% since 2023, the year prior. 2,050% increase. These countries have to be held accountable for that. Fentanyl is the leading cause of death in this country from ages 18 to 34. And if you talk to the families and the parents who have lost their children at the hands of this deadly poison, they will tell you they are grateful for the president finally taking strong action to end this epidemic and this crisis in our country.